Doesn't go through.
I'm gonna listen to this.
Okay, so there's our opening song, right? So I'm going to run through the packet basically. I will emphasize the key pieces that I think you should know. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. The idea is to give you as much information as I can in as short a period of time as I can. Okay? I will also say that this is not ideal teaching methodology right now.
Why are we not doing this in class?
Because we don't have time to do any classes.
I'm sorry, I think you just said that.
Yeah. So, all right, here we go. So the first page, okay? The opening page of your packet is the concept of checks and balances. Checks and balances are designed to make sure that one branch of government does not have more power than any other branches of government, right? So you have the executive, legislative, and the judicial branch. They each check each other in different ways, okay? The Constitution, as we know, replaced the Articles of Confederation, the weakness of the Articles of Confederation, thus did this. If you're on page 3, you will see that the Constitution employs 3 major devices that help prevent any one part of the government from becoming too powerful. They are federalism, separation of powers, and checks and balances. Okay? On the bottom of page 3, right over here. Okay? The federal system, federalism, the concept of that is you have state governments and national governments working together. We have looked at how they operate within one another at this point, but that is the structure that you have. It is important to note that the federal government will always trump the state government when there is one or the other that is in discussion. Okay? So the federal government will trump that. Separation of powers are obviously to make sure that each of them have a specific job, and we'll talk about those jobs there in a second. And checks and balances are ways in which if one branch attempts to do something, another branch has the opportunity to stop them from abusing their power. Okay? Federal supremacy is that concept of the federal government trumping the state government. Okay? Questions about that? Sort of brief background? All right, page 5. All right, the preamble of the Constitution. By the way, these review questions are good little questions to go through. The preamble, allow me to read it really quickly. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The preamble is sort of the Constitution's mission statement. It is broad, right? It does not have specific laws that are coming into it, but it's this concept that what is the ideal system for the United States? Okay? All right, so legislative branch.
How do you print this? Like, I'm trying to print it.
Make it a PDF.
I make a PDF.
I go up to that print thing in the file thing, and then I would print it out. It's a good idea. All right, so the legislative branch, okay? The job of the legislative branch, we're on page 5. The job of the legislative branch is to do what?
Make laws.
Make laws, good. Okay? Their job is to make laws. All right? You have 2 branches, or 2 sections of the legislative branch. The first, that was Austin, for those of you who couldn't see. That was that nice call right there. Nice work, okay? So you got the House, okay? House of Representatives, all right? There are 435 members of the House, okay? They serve for 2-year terms. All terms end at the same time, so the entire House is up for re-election every 2 years, okay? You must be...
Doesn't that number change as the population changes, though?
The number of members per state changes, and that's based on the census every 10 years, but it's always 435. Okay? Yeah.
Will, like, the Speaker of the House have to be elected?
By members of the House themselves.
Like, if Paul Ryan doesn't get elected as representative of Wisconsin?
Then they would have to select a... Well, no, as we just found out, You do not have to be a member of Congress to be the Speaker of the House. I just found that out last year. So it could have been when nobody wanted that job, it could have been me that they would have selected. I would have turned it down because I love you all so much. Okay? So you must be 25. Okay? At least 25. You have to have been a U.S. citizen for 7 years. You must live in state. You must live in the state you represent. You do not have to live in the district you represent, but you must live in the state that you represent. Yeah.
So, if somebody, let's say, wanted to be in the House of Representatives and they purposely moved because they thought they had a better chance somewhere else, is there like an amount of time
Nope.
they have to be living there? Or
Nope.
They just have to be there?
So long as you live in the so for example, Hillary Clinton moved to New York and became a senator in New York after Clinton was the president, right? There was no, as long as you've hit the citizenship piece, you're good to go. Okay? Yeah, Davis.
Can you be in the house as long as you want?
Yes, there is no, there are no term limits.
So I'm living in England. I moved here when I'm 18.
Yep.
I can run when I'm 25.
So long as you have been a U.S. citizen for 7 years. So the citizenship, you aren't going to become a citizen most likely in
7 years.
2 years, right? Usually it's 5 years to get that. So, okay. So the head of the house is the Speaker of the House. Okay. Speaker of the House is the head of this person, or is the head of this body. Okay. We talked about how they are changed every 10 years depending on how many people are living within the state.
What
Okay.
would change?
The number of representatives for each state, right? So if the population of your state increases dramatically, that will get you more representatives, and another state will lose representatives, but you will stay at 435. Okay. If a representative dies or resigns, there is a special election to select a new person. Okay.
Can they be impeached?
So you can be. Can you be impeached from the House?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. The House has the power of impeachment.
Good transition.
All right. Lovely transition. Okay. They have the power to charge someone with misconduct in office. So again, impeachment does not mean you've been convicted of anything. It is an accusation that you have been charged with committing some sort of crime in office.
Wait,
Okay.
is this the only place that can impeach people?
They are where the impeachment process begins. Yes, the House must impeach them. Okay. We'll talk about the process of that as we move forward. Good on the House?
Mhm.
Okay, next, the Senate. Okay. The Senate is going to be,
Wait, what does the House do?
so I'm just giving you the stats right now. Okay, we'll go back to that in a second. Okay, I'll talk about what they do as a whole. Okay, the Senate. All right, you have 100 members. Okay, so 2 per state, right? They serve a 6-year term. So every 2 years, a third of the Senate is up for re-election. Okay, so once every 6-year political cycle, there will not be in a state a Senate election. For us, that was 2 years ago. I believe Al Franken is up for re-election this year. I want to say. Does that sound right? Which I'm surprised we haven't heard more about that race at this point. But so you must be 30. You must have been a citizen for 9 years, so 2 years longer. You must live in state. Okay, so same rules in there. Okay. The head of the Senate is the vice president. Okay. The vice president, though, will only
Like Vice President of the Senate?
of the United States. They are the head of the Senate, but the vice president only votes in case of a tie. Okay? So when you have a 50-50 split in the Senate, that is where the party of the vice president becomes important, right? Because then they will split. Other than that, they are just there. So when you are seeing the speaker of the, or when you're seeing the State of the Union address, because you have the Speaker of the House and the Vice President sitting behind the President during those, it's because you have the head of the House and the head of the Senate that's sitting behind him. Yeah.
Is this like, is it really even between Democrats and Republicans in the Senate?
Right now,
Yeah.
Democrats have it by 2, maybe.
Does it usually go with like which president?
It varies. It varies quite a bit.
The House
often
is
is it?
Republican.
The House is Republican. The Senate is Democrat.
How often is it a 50-50 split?
Not that often. Is 54 for
Yeah.
Democrats
2 independents, 54 for Republicans.
in the Senate?
Yeah.
So the Senate's controlled by Republicans right now. Is that right? Yeah, I guess that is right.
Caucusing as Democrats.
Yeah, that's right.
46.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're like president is Democratic and then the House and Senate are Democratic, would you just get like a bunch of stuff done?
So, well, yes and no. So we saw that with Obama in his first term, and he was able to push through. They had the supermajority then, so they were able to push through laws. So the big thing that they pushed through was healthcare. The problem with doing it is that if you push something through and it feels very much like it is being pushed through, right, that there's not debate, then in general, Americans respond to that by voting in the other party. So the Republicans regain the Congress very quickly. We saw with Reconstruction, right? When Reconstruction gets pushed through, all of a sudden the Democrats take over again and the Republicans lose power. So there is a balancing act that you have to do where you have to decide if you are going to either A, push as much stuff through as you can and hope that it sticks, or you're going to try to work within the system and make it. But usually there is a reaction to one party having too much power. And that's part of this whole process that we have this. Okay? Okay. The Senate, what they will do, okay, is the Senate will be in charge of trying impeachment. So you've heard the phrase Senate hearings before? So what will happen is, for example, Bill Clinton, when he is impeached, the House accuses him of impeachment, right? The Senate then tries him on that impeachment to determine whether or not he is guilty or not guilty, okay? Nixon does not go through this because he ends up resigning before the process happens. Yeah.
So they determine guilty or not guilty?
Correct. Okay. Okay. So, jobs of the House and the Senate. All right. What do they do? Okay. The House. All right. First job of the House, okay, is they propose tax laws. So any tax law that comes from the Congress will start in the House of Representatives. Okay? The Senate, all right? Approves presidential appointments.
Wait, that's the only job the House has?
That's their only single job. Okay, they're going to make laws also. These are jobs specific to each place. We'll talk about what they do together in a second. Okay, they can approve presidential appointments. So if the president appoints a judge, for example, it is the Senate's job to approve or deny that. Okay, they ratify treaties with foreign governments. Okay, so whenever there's a treaty of some sort, the Senate must be the one that puts them together, or that approves it. Okay, combined. So these are the jobs that both do. Okay, they both can propose laws. All right, so Other than a tax law, which has to come from the House, any other law can be proposed in either House or Senate. They can declare war. This is a job that is not as important anymore because oftentimes we are running operations, as they call them. The last time we declared war was Korea. Everything we have done since then has been an operation. When we talked about presidential power, the president can send in the military for an operation. They cannot declare war. Where the Congress will check that is by saying we won't pay for it if they don't like it.
What branch is the Congress?
That's legislative, House and Senate. Okay, and I forgot to mention total. Right, the Congress is made up of 535 members, 435 in the House, 100 in the Senate. Right, so as a total, Congress is 535.
So they propose laws. They don't have to jointly propose laws. They can propose them in either the
In
House.
each one, and we'll talk about how the law passes through that in a second.
But to declare war, they have to jointly agree.
Nope, it would be one could declare war, the other has to approve it then. Okay.
That was my question.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay.
Wait, you just
Yes.
like Iraq.
Yeah.
Both all the Congress they voted for.
They never declared war in that.
Okay.
What they did was they agreed to the war because they helped pay for it. But those were
But didn't they have a vote on it?
so it's called Operation Desert Storm, right? Because it is not a war itself, right? It's a presidential power thing. But if the Congress doesn't approve of it with the money, it's not going to happen. But if the Congress doesn't approve of it, then the president can say the Congress is not supporting our troops, and so it gets political in that situation. Okay? They can override a presidential veto with a 2/3 vote. As we'll see in a second, both. Both have to approve it. So 2/3 total. Okay? 535. Okay. They also. Okay.
So 2/3 vote from Congress or from Congress? Just the whole thing.
That's what they kept doing to Andrew Johnson, right?
Right. They can propose amendments to the Constitution.
Can the president do that too?
Nope. Can the president do what?
Propose amendments?
No.
What if he wants to?
Can't do it. Doesn't have the job. Power to amend the Constitution begins with the
Can he
Congress.
veto amendments?
No. Yes.
Can't the court propose amendments?
No. The court will determine if an amendment is constitutional or not.
Okay, and they can like edit the Constitution.
No. No. They can't edit the Constitution.
Okay,
So.
but like since they interpret the Constitution,
Mhm.
can't they like add to an amendment to make it more clear?
No. They can just declare if an amendment is constitutional or they can They can determine if a law is constitutional or unconstitutional. Once an amendment is passed, the amendment is passed.
But then what about the amendment, the 28th Amendment about gay marriage?
There is no 28th Amendment. That's a law.
Oh,
So that's a
okay.
law, right? People have said that they would like to see that become a law, or a amendment to the Constitution, but it is not an amendment to the Constitution.
Okay.
Okay? So,
So to propose it, they have to have a 2/3 vote, or to
correct, to propose it. Okay, we'll talk about how that works in a second. Yeah.
So is it like one senator or like a committee would like propose it? Or like
Right. So let's flip to page 9. Okay. If you look at page 9, we'll talk about how a bill becomes a law. Okay. So I'm going to basically just read down on this chart. Okay. So what happens is a bill will start either in the House or the Senate, and once it is started, let's say it starts in the House for argument here, right? It must pass by a majority vote. So a law must pass by 50%.
Of both?
A vote of one. Okay. Then it goes to the other chamber. So if it starts in the House, it then goes to the
Or
Senate.
it can start.
It can start in either one as long
But
as
it
it's
has to be checked by the other one?
correct. As long as it's not a tax law, right? Taxes must start in the House. Okay. So it then goes to the Senate. What will happen there is they will have committees, and they will either pass the law or they will come back and they will say, we will pass it with a different, we'll change a couple things. So that's why you'll hear sometimes where they'll say something won't pass the Senate or something won't pass the House right away, and so it doesn't go. But if you do get 50% in the House and 50% in the Senate, it then goes to the president. If the president then has a choice, and this is the president's check on laws, the president can either sign the bill, and if he signs the bill, it becomes a law. Or he can veto the bill. If he vetoes the bill, it returns back to Congress, back to where it originated. The Congress then has the choice of doing one of three things. One is they can just forget about it, all right? Two, they can amend it and then start the process all over again. Or three is they can try to override it. And if you get a 2/3 vote in both the House or the Senate, both, has to go in both, then that will override the presidential veto and that will become a law. As you can imagine, getting 2/3 is challenging. And it's designed to be challenging, right? This is a check on a check. You don't want them passing laws that are going to be easily accomplished like that, right? Yeah.
Is there a limit to the amount of times they can amend it?
Nope. You can do it as long as you want until the law is passed. Eventually what they're going to do is they're going to say, this is not going to happen, right? So for example, if you looked at a bill today, if the Republican-led Congress tried to pass a bill on abortion, right? They could send a bill to Barack Obama 1,000 times trying to make abortion illegal, or even better, a pro-gun bill, right? They could send it to him 1,000,000 times that we want to allow for all machine guns to be sold on the streets, right? Obama is going to veto that every single time, right? So they could just keep doing it, and it's just going to get rejected every time. And they're not going to get 2/3 because the Democrats are not going to go along that way. Did you have a question? No. Okay. So if we go to page 10, okay, there are a couple of other pieces that come into this, okay? What we have at the bottom, we have already talked about those. Yeah, Brittany?
Do we need to know about their powers to do stuff like regulate commerce and coin money and etc.?
No. The Commerce Clause, no, I'm not. But what I do want to talk about is on page 11, the Elastic Clause. Okay? And what the Elastic Clause does, okay, first of all, there are the enumerated powers, and those are the powers that are listed in the Constitution. Okay, so if you're looking on page 8 and 9, right, these are the laws that, Brittany was just talking about: coin money, declare war, raise armies, maintain a navy, all of these things. The Elastic Clause, what that allows them to do is it allows them to make laws that are not specifically listed in there. So, for example, the FCC, all right, which regulates what goes on television, right? And sort of the famous one with that is from the Super Bowl, 10 years ago, where Janet Jackson had her wardrobe malfunction, right? And they fined CBS for that, right? They can determine what goes on broadcast television and how that works, okay? They have the ability to do that, okay? What's that?
CBS.
Yeah.
It's not CBS.
I don't know if it was CBS, but yes, they did find
So
them.
they can make laws not.
Not specifically listed in there. It allows them, if you think elastic, right? It allows them to stretch, right? And it's laws that they think are necessary and proper for the benefit of the United States. Okay? That aren't listed specifically in the enumerated laws, which is this section 8. That's right here. Okay? Habeas corpus, okay? The idea of that is you have a speedy trial, okay? And that is the writ of habeas corpus, section 9, okay? You must be given the right to a speedy trial, and that will be changed, and we'll see that also included in the Bill of Rights, okay? And then quickly, what the states may not do, Okay, what you are not allowed to do under the legislative branch, okay? The president can only spend with approval from the Congress, okay? So this is where we were talking about the military piece. If the president wants to spend, if Congress doesn't approve, they do not have the ability to do so, okay? That checks the president's power.
Does not approve of spending amount of money.
He cannot spend anything without, so we just saw the budget. Obama just put his budget forth today and already Congress is saying no to it. So it's already starting, but you have to have, whatever the United States wants to spend and whatever Obama wants to spend, the Congress must approve that spending, okay? A state cannot have a foreign policy of their own. It must be a national foreign policy. They cannot have a currency different from the United States currency, and they cannot tax imports from other things.
Can states make their own laws?
Yes, and we'll talk.
How does that work if
we'll-
it doesn't go to the president?
So long as the law does not interfere with a federal law, the states have the ability to make that law.
But how?
That is part of the Bill of Rights, and we'll talk about that on Thursday. But if you have a law that is, so for example, driving age, okay? There is no federal law that says what the driving age can be. So some states are 16, some states are 17. There is a federal law that says the drinking age must be 21. So you could not have in your state the drinking age be 18.
So then, like for marijuana laws.
Marijuana, we'll talk about on.
under the-
Marijuana is tricky because there's a federal law that the federal government has determined they're not going to enforce, which
What
is
that federal law?
which is part of the kind of tricky part. Okay, questions about that? This will be the longest of the three. The other ones won't go as long. Review questions on page 13 are a good thing to look at. These pieces, if you do have questions, I can get them in class, or we can do them tomorrow at the start. Okay?
What's that thing that you just told us?
Hold on one second.